Okay, one more second, ladies. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm just setting this up so it's also going to be on a live stream on YouTube. Okay. Um, hello, it's a Sarbatevis. Maybe we'll talk about that for a minute at the end. Um, but I'm very excited about starting this new series, or continuing, if we want to call it that. But we started learning Derech Hashem earlier, and we made our way through the first chelek of the Sefer, which it explains the fundamentals of why we're here, what Hashem created us for. Chelek Dalid, which is what we're going to be starting today, is sort of like the practical aspect of the Sefer. Chelek Beis and Chelek Gimel deal with Hashgacha and with Nevuah, basically, and there's obviously a lot of very important ideas that are there. However, practically speaking, as far as like getting the most out of the Sefer, and this is what I was told from my Rebbe and these Yanim Rebbe Yosef Spinner, that he holds that the first chelek, the sections that we learned, are the foundations, and then chelek Dalid is sort of like the application of what it is that we learned in Chelek Aleph. So I would recommend that you have the Sefer with you, while we're learning through it, just because we're going to be, learning it inside. And it's easier to see that. You could find it online. The text is available, for free all over the place. You just type in Derech Hashem text in Hebrew, or in English, it's probably available even online. Okay, so we're going to, before we start Chelek Dalet, I want to sort of like refresh our memories, or those of us maybe who weren't with us for the first round. But if you open up to Chelek Aleph Perek Dalid, right? Chelek Aleph Perek Dalid, Dalid. Okay, so it's Chelek Aleph, the first section, Perek Dalid, and Os Dalid. And this is going back to where the Ramchal was explaining to us that we are put into the world with two parts, right? There's the or and the choshech, right? The light and the darkness, or the spiritual and the physical, and each person's relative balance between these two is different when they come into the world. Everybody's neshama is dialed down to a different degree, and it's our job over here, while we're here, to push away that choshech, fill in that lack, and bring in as much shleimus as we can. And the way to do this is, so he explains to us over here for the first time, sort of in the Sefer. So take a look in Chelek Aleph, Perek Dalid, Os Dalid. And this is where he explains to us that Hashem set up a system for us to fill in that lack, right? He put us into a place that was lacking. He put us into a place that is not fixed, that requires fixing. And he gave us the manual. He gave us the way to fix it. And he calls these Sedarim and Drachim, right? We learned this before. The Ula me'omek atzas chachmasu yisbarach haya l'sader hadvarim ba'ofen she'af biyosa adam shakua b'chomer b'hechrech. Even though a person is deeply immersed in the physicality, yuchol mitoch hachomer atzmo va'isek hagufani hisiges hashleimus v'yisalos elazach v'elamayla. Right? That's what Hashem had in mind. Through the physical world, we're not supposed to come here and pretend we're not here. We're supposed to be here and live here, and through the physical world, we are able to attach ourselves to Hashem. And he calls these the gvulos and the sdarim, right? Hashem, which we explained back then, was the los aseis and the aseis, right? The gvulos are the things that we're not allowed to do, and the sedarim, the way that Hashem structured the world with the rules, those are the things that we do in order to create the shlemos. Okay. Now skip to Hey, Os Hey, because I'm just want to go over this, kind of sort of quickly. Right? So that's what he's explaining to us. The mitzvahs asay and mitzvahs los asay. That's those are the ways that Hashem set us up in order to create this shleimos in the world. That each one of the mitzvos, every single one of them, applies to a certain aspect of our shleimos and chisaron, and fills it in. I'm just skipping a little bit. V'ulam prat ha-mitzvahs kulam, v'chein prate kol mitzvah mitzvah, hinehem yusadim ala mitas mitziyusav v'nyano shel ha'adam b'chol b'chidosav. Right? And every mitzvah, the whole mitzvahs as a whole, and every specific mitzvah is structured after a person, right? Like a person has all different parts, so to speak, spiritually. So all of those parts are the parts that we're given that require tikkun, that require to, fixing. And we're given all of the mitzvahs that correspond to all of those parts in order to fix it all, right? And we're given every piece, every detail. That's why every mitzvah is all those different parts, and it's all there in order to let us fill ourselves in. Let's skip to halacha vav over here. Just again, we're going an overview of what the mitzvos are, and this is a very important one where he says vohine shoresh kol inyan avodahu, right? But let's not forget what's the root of all of this, right? We have to do all of the mitzvos. We can't possibly achieve shleimus without the mitzvos. But what's the root of all of it? What's the point of all of it? Hayos adam pone tamid laboro. The point is for us to always be turning to Hashem. We have all of these mitzvos, this whole setup to give us the opportunity to live our life in such a way that we are always able to connect to Hashem. Right? That we have to realize that all the time, whether when we're involved in the world and involved in the mitzvahs, that we're here to do this, right? Right? And the whole reason that we're here is in order to go through these challenges, in order to suppress our physicality and raise up our seichel, which we explained means spirituality. It means like our connection to Hashem. And then he explains in Zion, he goes on to explain that there's two types of avoda. There's the Maisei HaMitzvos, right? There's the specific mitzvos that we have, right? And that's the Taryag mitzvos and the structure of the Torah, of the instructions that we're given as far as the things that we have to do. And the second aspect is Masha Adam Mishnamish Minol Natzarcho, right? That's using the world in a positive way, aside from the check boxes that you're checking off for the mitzvos themselves, right? And this we explained that the Ramchal then explains, that using the world and going out to work and making a parnasa, which every person has to do, and doing that in using the Torah to guide you and following the mitzvos. So that's right. That's using the world l'shem shemaim. Okay, so he explains to us over here this concept that we're given these mitzvos in order to fill us in. He explains to us that the point of this all is to constantly, again, it's a dual point. There's a point to the mitzvos, even if a person wouldn't be, so to speak, turning to Hashem, right? They're missing the main point of the mitzvah, but the tikkun of that part of the neshama is still going on. But the person is perhaps losing out on a certain hizdabkus to Hashem, or a certain connection that he has the opportunity to have. But the point of it all is for us to be turning to Hashem and to be focusing on Hashem and recognizing Hashem. So that's the structure. He tells us that in Ches, just to finish up with this section, right? What's the way to get a person to view the world in such a way that they're going to be dedicated to doing the mitzvos this way and living their life this way? This is by engendering within ourselves love for Hashem and yira for Hashem. Okay, this is like we spoke about. You think about Hashem and how great he is and how big he is. And then finally, the last thing he says in Tes, where we saw this, that we're going to see this again now also in Chelik Daled, that among all of the Siddharim that Hashem gave us, there's one special one, right, which has more power than all of the others, and that's the inyan of Talmud Torah, the inyan of learning Torah, and that connects a person to Hashem more than the other mitzvos, and it gives the person the opportunity to connect to Hashem even in mitzvos that they don't have the physical opportunity to do, but learning the Torah about those mitzvos gives a person an opportunity. So he tells us that, and we're going to see that also in Chelik Daled. There's a whole section that's going to be dedicated specifically to the idea of Talmud Torah. Okay, so this is just a very brief overview of Chelik Aleph, the aspects of Chelik Aleph that we saw that focus on the concept of our avoda, and the explaining to us what the point of the avoda is, what the point of all of these mitzvos are. So what we're going to do now is skip to the end of Chelik Daled, and learn, how the Ramchal goes through uh, all the aspects of avoda, all the aspects of mitzvos, of the zmanim, of the the mitzvos that we do throughout the day, the mitzvos that come up throughout the year. It's a full sort of overview, not the halachos, right? It's not a halacha sefer, but it's an explanation now of how all of the mitzvos that we have fit into this structure that he's been spending the rest of the sefer until this point explaining to us. Okay, so we'll start b'siyata d'shmaya, chelet dalid of the Sefer Derech Hashem. The Inyan of Avoda, Perek Aleph. Okay, so this is the different aspects of Avoda. Aleph. Klal ha'avoda mischalik l'shnei chalakim. Okay, there's two aspects of our Avoda when it comes to the Sidorim and Gvulos and Sidorim that Hashem gave us. Ha'echad ha'talmud. One is learning about those mitzvos. V'asheni ha'maisa. The second aspect of our Avoda is the actions. Okay, and now the Maisa itself, Maisa mischalik la'arba, right? The types of actions that we have, right? He's going to talk about Talmud Torah on its own. That's one chelik of the avoda, and the whole other chelik of the avoda, the Maisim. So there's four types of mitzvos, four types of actions. Ha'echad tamidi, there's certain things that are constant all the time that come up. Hasheni yomi, certain things that come up daily, on a daily basis, a person has to do these things. Hashlishi zmani, the third one is based on the zmanim of the year, right? Certain on Pesach the rules are different, and on Sukkot the rules are different. V'haravi mikri, and the fourth are things that come up that technically a person can go through their whole life and never encounter a person whose donkey is needing to be unloaded, or which applies to a person, unloading shopping carts or whatever it is. Also, right, a person technically can go through their whole life never encountering that mitzvah, right? So that's a mitzvah mikriyi. It's a mitzvah that if you encounter it, you have to do it, right? Many people go through their whole lives and never do shiluach hakein, right? Because you're not required to go and find a bird to chase away, right? As opposed to, let's say, shofar, which is a mitzvah zmaniyi that a person is required to do. Okay, so these are the four different types of, he's going to explain this now to us. Gimel, hatmidi, right? So what does it mean, the tmidi avoda? Who mashi yechuyev bo ha'adam tamid? These are the things that a person is required all the time. Gon avas Hashem v'yiraso, right? The concepts like he explained earlier, we saw in Chelik Aleph Dalid Ches that ava and yira are mitzvos. Those are mitzvos to engender within ourselves, to make ourselves feel this way, and those are mitzvos that are tamid. Hayomi, there's daily mitzvos, the concept of the masha yichuyev bo b'chol yom, v'ainu karbanos b'zman habayis v'achshav tfilos u'kriyashma. Right, so he's going to explain all of this to us. During the times of the Beis Hamikdash, there was karbanos, there was this special avoda of the Beis Hamikdash every day that they did a whole seder of avoda. And for now, we don't have that anymore, but now we have the tfilos, so he's going to explain that to us, and kriyashma. Hazmani, what does that mean? That at certain times that are known, so there's certain mitzvos that we have, Kagon Shabbosos, Yomim Tovim, right? Shabbos and Yom Tov. Hamikri, Mashiachuyev bo lefi mashiagiu lo min hamikrim, right? The mikri mitzvos are what comes to me through sort of, not mikra meaning coincidence, but like happenings, right? Just the things that come up in my life. Kugon chala or meiser, pidyon aben, v'chayotze, right? These are all things that they come up. If I don't ever bake challah, I'm sure there's many men that in their lives never take challah because they never bake something and have to take challah from it, right? Pidyon aben, anybody who doesn't have a firstborn son doesn't do the mitzvah of pidyon aben, right? So those are mikre mitzvos. In every one of these four categories, there are mitzvos and averos, right? Things we have to do and things that we have to abstain from doing. Dahainu asay and velavin, right? Mitzvahs asay and mitzvahs los asay. Veheim heim sur merav asay tov. And this is all, this fundamental idea of staying away from ra and doing tov. Excuse me 1 second, please. Fast here in a few minutes. We start. Okay. So that's the chelik of the ma'asid dalit. V'amnam ikar kol ha'inyanim ha'ela b'derech klal nisbar b'chelik aleph perek dalit shehu apniya elav yisbarach. Right. So now the Ramchal is reminding us of what we just saw, going back to chelik aleph. That again, don't forget. And this is again, we discussed this back then when we learned in chelik aleph. This is from my rebbeim, I've heard this, a huge problem that you can have many people that focus on the mitzvos without focusing on Hashem. But it sounds funny to say that. And at the same time, it's very sadly true. A person can be very deeply involved in doing the mitzvos and be focusing on all the details of the mitzvah and all of that, and not really be thinking about Hashem and why he's doing this and what the point is to it, and so yeah, that's it. Again, is explaining us that don't forget the ikar of all of these things, right, is to connect to Hashem. Shu apniya elav yisbarach ubakashas kirvaso. Right, it's turning to Hashem and wanting His closeness. Kefi hadrachim asher chakak lanu lios miskarvim lo misdabik bo. Right, using the means that He gave us. Right, there's always this. Right, I'm saying we all know people like this. We all know, and we all ourselves are a mixture of this, right? But there's people who love Hashem and have tremendous, ava and even yira that they would describe, for the things that they consider that Hashem considers wrong that they would never do, right? However, they don't keep the mitzvos right. They don't really, focus on the performance of the mitzvos. So. They have this ava and this yira. They have this concept of closeness to Hashem and connection to Hashem, and I'm not that, and that's real. It could be that's real. That's they have that. However, that's not that you can't really have that if you're not following the mitzvos, right? You can't really make yourself shalem and like Hashem if you're not using the means that Hashem gave you to be mashlim yourself and be like Him. So, right, you can accomplish something for sure, and it's for sure. I wouldn't discourage a person from building up their feelings of love and fear of Hashem, even if they don't keep the Torah, right? Even if they don't fulfill the mitzvos. However, that there's a major part missing, and that's a major part of the shlemos that they are maybe going to be lacking. Again, this is all based on Hashem's judgment of what they could know and could, whatever, I'm saying. But the idea that a person who just, is all into God but doesn't keep the mitzvos, and then you, unfortunately, like I said, you have also the flip side. You have people who are all into the mitzvos and all into the, the details and all into, all the aspects that could tell you from every halachic angle, every aspect and facet. And at the same time, those mitzvos are not really making them like Hashem and bringing them closer to Hashem, and again, yes, they're fulfilling those check marks. Their neshama is getting whatever it's getting. They're there's that aspect, those aspects of shleimus are happening because the person is doing it, and at the same time they're missing the major point. They're missing the forest for the trees. So they're just focusing on the details without really focusing on Hashem, and that's also wrong. That's also, I don't know which is more wrong. I can't say, right? But that's also a wrong way to be a Jew and serving Hashem. A person has to have that balance between, I have to be keeping the mitzvahs. There's no way for me to really connect to Hashem and really be mashlim myself the way that I can be without keeping the mitzvahs. There's just no way. And at the same time, I have to not lose Hashem through the mitzvahs and only focus on the, the actions without remembering what it's all about and focusing and working on that. Okay, so just trying to get closer to Hashem. Okay, so what does this entail? This entails, pushing away, getting rid of, being mishtadel to get rid of all menios, everything that gets in the way between me and Hashem. If there's any aspect of physicality or my bad midos or my taivas, whatever it is that I have in me that is, causing me to be distanced from Hashem, so I have to get rid of those. Right, his karvus low, and to make an effort to get close to Hashem. Until a person can ultimately reach that stage of shleimus, ultimately reach that stage of perfection, and this is what Hashem wants, for a person to be mashlim themselves and reach that stage. Okay. So that's the idea of the avoda. Let's not forget. Hey, ach prate ha'inyanim. However, all of the details of each of the mitzvos, heim kefi mashu huchaku chukos hanushios va'olam b'chol b'chinoseihem v'drachem shenitnu l'adam lishtalim b'shleimus ulahashli mimo esabriya kula kfisa derech. So the mitzvos are here to make us shalom, and you see how he writes it, like, the world was made in a way, and man was made in a way to give us the opportunity to do all of those mitzvos. Right? It's just interesting how he writes that lashon kefi mashehuchaku chukos enushiyos va'olam b'chol b'chinuseim, like the based on the way that the mitzvahs are, right? Drachim shenudlu al mishtalim b'shleimus ulehashlim imo es abriya kula k'fi sedereh b'chol machla koseha b'sharsheh u'b'anafeh. Right, and this gives a person the opportunity to be mashlim the whole world on all of its aspects, both of the roots, the shrashim, and also the anafim, also all the details, the branches. So he wants to, like he said, he's not going to go through the entire Shulchan Aruch and the entire Taryag Mitzvos, and although he has, there are Svarim that the Ramchal has. There's a sefer here, which is like it just was printed from Amish for the first time within the past year or so. It's called Sefer Shrashi HaMitzvos, which was written by the Ramchal, and it's like a Sefer HaMitzvah. It's almost like a Sefer HaChinuch type of a sefer, but he doesn't break up every single mitzvah. He breaks the mitzvos into sections and into groups and explains like what each grouping of mitzvos is all about in its Kabbalistic structure. It's a very powerful sefer. I don't understand most of it. It was also put out by Rabbi Spinner. Rabbi Spinner has many of the copies of handwritten kisvei yad from the Ramchal that have never been published. So this was just published for the first time ever this year. One of the Ramchal's svarim that was never published before. So he's not going to do that over here in Derech Hashem. In that sefer he gets much more into this idea, but he's going to go over in a general sense those types of things that affect us and come up in a general sense that come up all the time, and then he's going to get to the Seder Zmanim. But from here we're going to understand that all details and all mitzvos have the same dynamic. Okay, 1 second. Okay, 1 second and 1 more minute until our little Seder Zmanim. Okay. Okay, Perek Beis. So this is he first is going to focus on Talmud Torah before he gets, right, like he said in the beginning, there's the learning aspect and the action, Talmud v'Hamaisa. So he's going to spend most of Chelek Dalid, in fact, all of it except for this piece right now is going to be spent on the Maisim. But the first he's going to address now in Perek Beis, he addresses now the concept of Talmud Torah, of learning Torah. What is this thing of Torah that is so much talked about, and people dedicate their lives to doing it and don't work and just want to learn as much as they can, and we encourage people to learn all the time and all. So what is this all about? Why is learning Torah so fundamental and so important? Okay, Hine Aleph, Hine Talmud HaTorah hu inyan muchrach. Right. First of all, you have to understand that it's something that you have to do. We can't avoid it. Right? Because without Torah, you can't do what you need to do. Right. So that's first of all. Right. You can't even try to make it through this world without learning. Right. Because even just picking up, I don't want to say even, picking up the Sefer Kitzur Shulchan Aruch in order to read through what do I need to do today. So that's learning Torah, right? You're learning. Any time that you are looking in the instruction manual of how to live your life over here. So that's called learning Torah. That's part. The reading the instruction manual is itself not just a means to an end, right? Normally, when you get something and you have the instructions, so the instructions don't serve a purpose other than telling you how to use this item or put it together. So Torah is not like that. On the one hand, you can't do anything without it because you don't know what to do. The fish is also Right? If you don't know what to do, how can you possibly do it? So that's first of all, right? However, this is different than an instruction manual, right? Because in addition to all of this, just in the learning, there is a tremendous point, a tremendous end to itself that is to lead to the shleimus of the person. Right? So, like we just saw earlier before, that he already addressed this briefly, that the idea of Talmud Torah does things that the other mitzvahs don't do, and that there's an aspect of Talmud Torah that is unique and special, as opposed to all of the other mitzvahs. So now he's going to get into that more deeply and to understand this better. Okay, so let's see. Beis. Bichlal ha'hashpos hanishpos v'menu yisbarach l'tzorach briyosov yesh hashpa achas elyona mikol ha'hashpos. Okay, so now we've discussed this many times in the past in all different contexts, but the way that the world runs is that Hashem is in Shemayim, so to speak, and is paying attention to everything that's happening down here and sending down his shefa for everything that has to happen. Right, there's hashpa'os that come from Shemayim. So there's a certain hashpa'ah that is greater than all of the others, on a higher level, a more spiritual, more refined level of light, or whatever you want to say, from Hashem. Yesh hashpa achas elyona mikol hashpaos she'inyana hu hayoser yakar u'mu'ula shebachol ma she'efshar shimatzei banimtzayim. And the what this shefa leads to, right? Any time this shefa again is coming down from Shemayim, so that's like creating a reality over here in the world, right? So if a person has, gets a shefa in Shemayim for tremendous wealth, so then the reality in the world that's going to be created is the person's going to win the lottery, or his stocks are going to go up, and that's going to that shefa is going to translate into reality. So there's a certain shefa that comes, that creates that spiritual reality in the world that is more than all the others. This shefa is like the closest one, so to speak, to Hashem. It's coming from like the highest place. And what is that shefa? What is that highest level of shefa? That's like sort of Hashem himself sharing himself with his people, right, with his creations. So Hashem gave us a way in order to have access to that highest level of shefa, that highest level of, again, that's very hard to, there's no translation to the word of revelation of Hashem, or emanation of Hashem, or however you want to put it, right? But there's a certain highest level, which is like sort of the closest of Hashem. It's like, so the deepest, highest level that Hashem lets us be exposed to over here in this world, right? And that is the shefa that comes through the Torah itself. Right? Because we say that the Torah is going to explain, like, that the Torah is like sort of a part of Hashem, and he shared it with us, right? It's like, that's why he's saying it's like this incredible thing that the lashon of shemechalik ha'adam yisbarach shmo mikvodo v'yikaro el bruav, that he shared with us, that he gave us access to this unbelievably high shefa, this unbelievably high spiritual access, right? And that's through the Torah. V'hu haTorah. Ve'inyan zeh mishlalim b'shtei bechinos, b'higayon u'b'haskala. And there's two aspects to this. There's two aspects of learning Torah. There's the one aspect, which is the learning itself, the higayon, the applying your what we call seichel, applying your intellect and trying to understand it. And then there's the haskala. The haskala is like the spirituality aspect of it. The fact that through learning this and thinking about it the right way and understanding it through learning Torah, so that connects me up to Hashem, that makes me spiritual. So this he explained earlier. So again, this is just the way Hashem set it up for us, which is a tremendous chesed. That when we open a sefer, we open a book like this, and we read the words, we're learning the words, or we open up a chumash, we open up a tehillim, and we read those words and we learn those words. Kosher bahem hashpos azos. Hashem connected to them this hashpah, that all we have to do to access that hashpah is tap in to the words. Kosher bahem hashpah azos, but often in such a way that how do we access that hashpah, right? If it's here, it's dormant, right? It's in the sefer and it's dormant. How do I access that hashpah and bring it to me and bring it to here into this world? By saying the words. But often just by speaking these words, just literally reading the words in the psukim, the person who is speaking those words is accessing this tremendous shefa, right? So a person who's just sitting and reading Tehillim and doing their best to focus, but maybe they don't understand every word. Just sitting and reading those words is pulling down the shefa from Shemayim. That has to be done the right way, which is going to explain, soon. We're not going to see probably this week, but we'll see, right? That the way that you learn and the way that you access those words has to be done the right way. Right, and so too, right? The haskala, like taking those ideas and making them a part of me, making them spiritual, like allowing them to connect me, right? So the timashech hashpah is also the maskil osam, right? So even while I'm not reading the words, but let's say I'm thinking about them afterwards, or I'm thinking about it, I'm sitting and I'm contemplating, and I'm allowing those words to percolate in my head and to affect me. So that's called haskala, right? Again, this is not the concept of seichel that we're normally used to, right? The concept of seichel is almost like not the opposite, but it's not just dry rational logic. That's not what seichel is. It's haskala is the spiritual connection. However, there's many different levels even within Torah, right? Again, all the other mitzvos bring down a shefa, and every tefillah brings down a shefa, and every avoda brings down a shefa, but none are as high as Torah. Torah is the highest of shefa that we have. But even within Torah, there's different levels of shefa, even within the level of the shefa of the Torah. Just like everything else. So what does that mean? How are the different levels of shefa within Torah divided up? There's different levels of Torah, right? There's different levels of understanding of Torah. A person who just reads the simple pshat, the simple understanding, and just understands the words on a basic level, and that's how they learn. So that's again, this is higher than any other mitzvah, higher than any other shefa that could be within Torah. That's a certain level of shefa. But a person who learns more deeply into the Torah, and he's going to explain all of this, and learns like on a deeper level, so then they are accessing a higher level of the shefa. The same thing when it comes to this the percolation. However, again, he's just but that doesn't mean okay. But if I'm not accessing those highest levels because I'm not learning the secrets of the Torah and all of this, so then why am I bothering with these low level hashpos? No, don't say that, because even this no chelek doesn't do this, meaning every single part of Torah, every word of Torah, any word of Mishnah that you learn, every pasuk that you learn, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim es haaretz, has this shefa. Madrega achas madregos hashpa harama hazos. Every single one has part of this massive madrega. Again, he says, it's not a freebie. A person can't just be sitting and reading words and watching TV while he's reading, or somebody he's going to explain to us what the Tanaim are. Okay, let's just finish up Gimel, and then we'll we'll stop for tonight. I'll try to say one or two things if we have a minute. Right, that the more the haskala, right, the more a person allows this idea to percolate in their head and affect them, right, the more that a person right, let's just picture this, right? You have two people that go to a shir, right? So that's like the higayon, that's like the learning part, and they're both affected by some of the ideas, and they're talking about it in the car drive on the way home. And now they get home, right? And and so they've both done the higayon, and they've both done haskala, right? And it's tremendous, and they're both they both gained a lot. But now one of the person when they get home, so now they continue talking about it with their roommate or their friend or their spouse, or they write it in their journal, and they start thinking more about it, and let me contemplate how else can I apply that idea to myself, right? That all of that is haskala. And so the more a person is doing that, the higher level shefa they're going to get, right? Which again, that this is like, I guess, how you get from, I don't know what you would call this, how you get frumer, holier, but this is getting holier, right? The person is tapping into the highest level shefa, and haskala, thinking about it all the time. And the more that you're thinking about it, the more that it's on your mind. So then the more you're drawing in that shefa in yourself, and that's building yourself up and giving yourself more and more and more access. And then it's like it snowballs. But that's the more a person is masculine, and this is going to explain this. And this is sometimes just, it's not even up to the people. This is, some people have different abilities. Right? So it's not the same thing. A person who's level of haskala is just on the language of the psukim, to a person who really understands the kavanos of the psukim. And the person who understands the basic understanding is not the same as the person who understands it deeper. And it's infinite, the Torah. It's infinitely deep. Every single pasuk. There's no end. There's no such thing as, right? Like an amazing concept. There's no such thing as, like, I wrote a sefer on pasuk Bereshis, and I've written everything there is to say about that one pasuk. There's no such thing. It's infinite and limitless, and there'll be more ideas that can be found and more ideas that can come up, and there's no such thing as the end. So the more that you're mamik in the Torah, the deeper you go, the more you have access to. It never ends. A person, this is what they do, a person can spend their entire life, right, 90, 100 years learning Torah, and there's no end to it. Right? However, again, this is a tremendous chesed from Hashem, that you don't need to be a big makubal and a big Talmud Chacham in order to access this. Every single person has access to this. Anybody who thinks in Torah, right? Whatever that haskala is, so they're going to get that hashpah. Is everybody on their level, like everything in life, we all have the ability to do what we have the ability to do. Right? And even if a person has no haskala, right? You take a person as like a totally simple person, like all of those Baal Shem Tov stories, right? And he can just whistle, right? Or he just can say over one pasuk over and over and over, right? Whatever it is, right? So that it's still he still has access to that shefa, even if he has no haskala at all, right? But just the higayon, right? Let's say just that girl who went to the shir, and she didn't let it sink in at all, right? She left the shir, went into her car, turned on whatever the music, went home, turned on Netflix, and didn't think about it for a second. Still, it's an amazing thing. Still, just that higayon, just going and being a part of the learning of that Torah, is already an emtzai. It's already a means to getting part of it. Right? So he's saying an amazing thing. So basically, anybody in Judaism who's like in any which way connected is getting from the shefa of Talmud Torah, because just being a Jew, just like sitting at the just being a Jew, you have to know what you're doing, and it's all the time talking about halachos, talking about this. Is it candlelighting yet? No, candlelighting is Oh, in an hour. So that's Torah. We're talking Torah. We're talking about the Sdarim and the Gvulos of Hashem. So everybody has access to this. But obviously, the more, the better, and the deeper, and the more that a person can be maskil, the more that a person can think and focus on it. So then the better and the deeper that their haskala is going to go. Okay, so Hashem will continue next week with Dalid, right? The Perik, Chelik Dalid, Perik Beis, Os Dalid. I'll just speak just separately for a second.